Hello, ARC family, and welcome to the ARC Journey. We're continuing to have our conversations with Dr. Rob Guy about the ARC and its foundation and some of the key things that have happened through the Allegheny region. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Guy. Take it away, sir.
Well, it's been a delight to tell about our rich heritage here in the Allegheny region. And I love talking about these things because it's something that's um, it's always been important to me. And the older I get, the more I see things changing, the more important I realize it is. And it's scary in some ways to realize that much of our heritage and legacy, many of these stories, I don't know who knows them anymore. All the people I got them from, they're not around anymore, and it's increasingly felt like a burden placed on me to somehow pass the torch so that it doesn't die because I didn't. Um, there's a picture that I wanted to share with you today, and I think I referred to it in an earlier episode, but this picture is of the 1962 Barkeyville Academy reunion. Lester Thornton had come to Barkeyville in 1960. As you can see, there's a bunch of old people in the room at the time. Looking back now, that's 60 some years ago that this reunion took place. But 60 years before then, they were in school. so, so it's quite a stretch there, but they had been out of, some of them almost 70 years, they'd been out of the academy. And they were fading pretty quickly. So this was the last reunion. But it's especially noteworthy that Lester Thornton hosted this reunion, that he was present in the room, because this was, I think it was a pretty serious moment for Lester to be at this event, to meet several of these people, to be a part of that conversation, because these guys remembered it was important to them. Um, to get together like this because they knew they had been a part of something that was pretty special. Not special in Barkeyville, not even just special in the Allegheny regions, but special in the Church of God. It was an important part of our unfolding story as the Church of God. Um, they in some ways experienced the Church of God in its heyday, at its best. And I'll unpack that, I think, a little bit today, a lot in upcoming days. But a lot of times when you're young, you don't know what to think. You're just kind of along for the ride, and you don't really have a point of reference yet. And it's only as they looked back that they realized, wow, that was pretty meaningful. We got to know some pretty special people, and that's the kind of thing that was going on in these conversations at this reunion. I want to accent two particular families that were a part of this. I'm not going to point them out in the picture, but there are three Aikens in this picture. Um, Forney Aiken, you know him as F.O. Aiken. His his legacy looms large still in the Allegheny region. Um, Two of his sisters are in this picture as well, because several people in his family went to the Barkeyville Academy. His one brother, Ira, was a principal of the academy, and they were an interesting family, kind of representative at the time because they didn't grow up Church of God. They grew up Presbyterian, and they came to the Church of God, um, largely because they recognized the biblical commitment that the Church of God represented and the gospel imperative, that missional sense that the world needs the gospel. Christ came for the world, laid down his life for the world, and the church's responsibility is to herald that message. And they grew up in a congregation that really didn't believe that anymore. And when they saw it in the Church of God, they came to the Church of God and they never looked back. And we'll look at the Aiken family as a whole at some point. But here in 1962, at this reunion, Forney Aiken already has 60 years of ministry in the Allegheny region. And at this point, his one son had already started Weinbrenner Seminary, and his other son had already been instrumental in youth ministry, starting camps in 3 different conferences, and was about to launch Grove Manor in the next couple years. So the impact of this family is pretty considerable, but they grew up in Barkey's village. They knew those people. They saw the dynamic. It never left them, and you can hear it. If you ever had a glimpse of Dennis Arndt portraying Forney Aiken, or you've ever had a chance of reading Forney's recollections of his own, he's the typical Western Pennsylvania where he's not boastful, he's just kind of humble, telling his story. But if you read between the lines, you can see there were some exciting things going on in the region during his lifetime. The second family that I wanted to accent here, and I'll talk more about them in the future, especially in our next episode, is the Huntsbergers. There were a bunch of them, a couple of boys, a lot of girls, and those girls, they were sharp, they were sincere, they were active, and the Huntsbergers, just so you know who they are, um, they were um, they were Western Pennsylvania Church of God as much as you could be once they left the Mennonite fold. Their grandfather was Henry Barkey, that Barkeyville's named after. Their other grandfather was Peter Laux, who brought the Alverton congregations together. And so those Huntsberger kids that were part of the Barkeyville Academy, they represented the Allegheny region as a whole. They if you once you get to know our story, you'll realize that the missionaries that created the Allegheny region tapped into the Mennonite communities that were here. They preached there. Many of them only spoke German. Many of the missionaries only spoke German. And they tapped into those communities. And what they did was they connected with what a lot of Mennonites were feeling, but frustrated about, because the Mennonites had kind of lost their gospel fervor. So a lot of them were drawn right into the Church of God, attempted to replicate their Mennonite culture with that gospel focus. And that's what gave the Allegheny region its distinct flavor. Some of that has not died out after almost 200 years. It's kind of amazing. Once you know what to look for, it's kind of comical in some occasions. But those Huntsberger girls were very much a part of the life of Barkeyville, very much a part of the life of the Barkeyville Academy, and they represent, I think, what it looks like to carry that torch and to carry it well. I'm anxious to tell some more stories about those girls. I'm going to hold off on that right now. But the thing about this reunion is they remembered those days. They remembered what they had been a part of. They valued what was important. And in that room, that young new pastor at the Barkeyville Church, Lester Thornton, was drinking it in. And honestly, if you were to see this picture at a thrift store with nothing written on the back, you would see old people. You would have no stories. It would have no meaning whatsoever. Um, but with the stories, because Lester was listening, passed along those stories to me. Um, we've not lost it. As a matter of fact, we can keep once you have the different threads to weave together, you can keep expanding them. You can keep making connections. You can do the genealogical work on these different people, and you can recover much of what was lost. And I think that's really what my part has been to kind of as an archaeologist to just keep digging on these folks, to keep tying these stories together, and to realize, wow, this is this is quite a big iceberg that we're sitting on here, and again, so incredibly meaningful. I want to end with just two two thoughts. The Native Americans have a saying, and maybe you've heard it: the keeper of the seed corn. Um, and that's what they call the person that cherishes these stories and keeps retelling these stories. The image of the seed corn, you know about that if you're a farmer. You can't eat your seed. You've got to keep some seed back, or you eat next year's harvest. So, but somebody has to be entrusted with keeping that seed corn so that it doesn't get mixed up, it doesn't rot, and so that it is the seed that you need for the future. Um, Forney Aiken was a keeper of the seed corn. He passed it along. And he passed a lot of it along to Lester. Lester was a keeper of the seed corn. And we have much of what we have about the Allegheny region because he kept it. Um, I say Forney Aiken because it was his granddaughter, Barb Aiken, who's now in charge of our archives out there in Findlay. She has most of the Aiken stuff and has donated a lot of what we have to the archives out there. And I've dipped into that Aiken archive a lot over the years. I think I'm kind of a keeper of the seed corn as well. But one of the things that's heaviest on my heart is that just as our world changes, as we um, as we have a tendency to chase the new and the flashy and the fads, and we have a tendency to undervalue where we've come from and why that matters. Um, I think of I won't name them, but I could name a bunch of colleges and other organizations who somewhere along the way with the changing of the leaders and the changing of the generations forgot who they were, forgot what they were about, forgot what makes them special, and kind of lost their way and lost their significance and lost their voice and lost what's meaningful about them. And well, when you lose those things, it's you're not far from just giving up and say, what does it matter anyway? Um, Remembering what matters springs from remembering what was so much a part of that dynamic in the Church of God, the why the scriptures matter, why our togetherness matters, why Christ and his gospel matter, why people that we're trying to share the gospel with matter. It's so easy to be simplistic about these things and lose our bearings and forget about um, the things that anchor us. And that's why I'm really excited to be able to share some of these pictures, tell some of these stories, reintroduce our legacy to the Allegheny region, and so that we can cherish it and it lives on to celebrate long into the future.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for sharing. It is important to remember these people as they have seeded into our lives, and missions that they've implemented and started, and how important they are to us. So I want to tell you that we're thinking of you. We're praying for you. Keep shining wherever God has planted you, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye bye.